I'm a student at the University of Washington Bothell, and I'll be starting their computer science program this fall. I'm an American, born and raised. I was born in Florida, but have lived most of my life in Washington State between Seattle and Bellevue. On the morning of Saturday, September 1st, 2012, a group of 8 Muslim college friends and I set out for a day of fun at Lake Chelan. The weather predictions looked good, and we planned to rent some jet skis to make the best of what was left of the Seattle sun before it went into its annual winter hibernation. We left at around 9 a.m. in 2 cars, a new BMW 3 Series that one of my friends had rented, and a Toyota Prius. We picked up some snacks, an essential part of any road trip, and we were enthusiastic as we embarked on the 3-hour drive out to the lake. Our jet ski reservations were made for 5:30, so we had plenty of time. Along the way, we stopped at a river to stretch our legs, toss a football around, and test our ability to wade against the river's current. And it was pretty embarrassing how difficult this was for a group of 20-something-year-old guys to do. We soon got back on the road, stopping at a McDonald's to use the restroom. And while there, I casually observed that my friends were the only brown-skinned people to be seen. And I realized that as we were getting further out from Seattle, the diversity of the population was quickly dropping. But I didn't think much of it, and we soon resumed our trip. We arrived at Lake Chelan at around 2 p.m. and met up with some other friends who were already there and staying at a hotel on the lake. Since we all still had time before picking up our jet skis, we decided to go for a swim and discovered the water to be bitterly cold despite the sunny weather. Needless to say, we didn't stay in the water for too long, and as we got out around 5 o'clock, we knew it was time to pray. And so Muslims, we pray 5 times a day, and this was the midday prayer known as Asr. Since we didn't have much time before we needed to get going to the jet ski rental place, we decided it would be easiest to pray outside instead of in our friend's hotel room, and so we did that. And although none of us were dressed like in an overtly Muslim manner, although I was wearing a skull cap, or a Muslim skull cap, the rest of us were just wearing shorts and shirts. The prayer of Muslims is very distinctive, with a series of prostrations and bows. And so it is conceivable that someone saw us praying while we were at the lake and then followed us to the jet ski location, the jet ski rental location, where this incident occurred. After praying, we went and picked up our jet skis, and all of us had a blast flying across the lake. The water was still freezing, but the combination of adrenaline and sunshine helped mitigate things somewhat. I had jet skied before, but had forgotten how tiring it was. Many of my friends managed to fall off or flip their jet skis entirely, and I'm proud to say that I didn't humiliate myself like they did. Really easy to insult your friends when they're not here to come up with a reply. After our 2 hours in the water were up, we returned our jet skis and light vests and walked back to our cars exhausted. That was when one of us noticed the graffiti on one of our cars. The sun had set, and there was still enough light to see the damage. The entire right side of the BMW 3 Series had been keyed, and when I say the entire right side, I mean the whole thing, from the front bumper, across the door panels, all the way to the rear bumper. And written what I assume was permanent marker were the words "Sand Niggers" and "Doon Goons." Doon Goons is a new one for me. The artist had also etched into the paint, with their keys, a crudely drawn penis and a pair of breasts. And it's interesting to note here that none of us were Arab, but I'm sure the irony of this would have been lost on the perpetrators. Although my friend who had rented the car and the rest of us were upset, I felt like none of us were all that surprised. We were all fairly aware of the rise in anti-Muslim beatings, murders, the vandalism and burning of mosques across America. And though we were victims of what was thankfully a much less violent crime, it just wasn't surprising that this would happen to us in the post-9/11 environment that we live in. The sentiments that have come, the anti-Muslim sentiments that have resulted from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that continue to stir up sentiments against Muslims. We called both the rental company and the police, and the local sheriff came out to take a report and took photos of the damage and the rest of the vehicle. He did not search for fingerprints. After asking us if we had any idea who did it, we did not. The sheriff bid us good night and departed. By now it was time for the evening prayer, and we decided to pray right there in the parking lot where the vandalism had occurred. Both as a way to save time and to make a statement that we were not afraid and that we were not going to be intimidated. We prayed, got some food, and settled in for the long ride home to Seattle. Now I pray on one hand that God guides the perpetrators. At the same time, I do want justice to be done. I would love for them to be caught. It is not fair that my friend has to pay for the damages to this vehicle that was done by the perpetrators. And it does seem realistic at this point that he will have to pay if these people are not caught. And my friend, for instance, the one who had rented the car, did not want to disclose his identity out of fear of harassment. And we see this so frequently amongst the Muslim community. amongst Muslim victims of hate crimes. They don't even report the incidents out of fear of harassment, and so we never know that they occurred. Someone at work gets harassed, doesn't report it because they don't want to lose their job. Someone in a neighborhood gets beat up, doesn't report it because they don't want to face more further physical violence. And so I feel like, I wanted to do this in order, one, to please God by standing up for justice, and two, in order to stand up on behalf of Muslims everywhere who are out of fear, who are fearful of disclosing their identity. And just to make a clear stance and give a clear message that these sort of things should not be tolerated and they're not okay in our American society. And that's all I have to say.